Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing String-3. Let's go straight into it. Given a string, count the number of words ending in Y or Z, so the Y in heavy, and the Z in fez count, but not the Y in yellow. We'll say that a Y or Z is at the end of a word if there is not an alphabetic letter immediately following it. Note character.isLetter tests if a char is an alphabetic letter. Okay, go ahead and pause and try this one. Okay, so let me zoom in a bit. So I do not think we will need a I don't think we'll need two loops for this, but we will need one. So I'm going to create a count variable here that is going to be the number of words ending in Y or Z that I found so far, and then I'm going to loop through my string. So I'm just going to say for int I equals 0, I less than str.length, I plus plus, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at each character, and if this character is a Y or Z, and the next character is not an alphabetic letter, so that basically means either there's a character after it and it's not a letter, or it's at the end of the string. And if both of those conditions are satisfied, then we have found a word ending in Y or Z. So if the char at I, or first I'll actually get the char here and store it in a variable. You don't have to do this. So the char at I, so if C is Y, it says ignore case, so C is Y or capital Y, or C is Z or capital Z, then, okay, first of all, that condition has to be true, so it has to be one of these guys. So if that's true, and either, hopefully you're, I'm doing a lot of stuff in one if statement here, but it's a Y or Z, and either we are at the end of the string, which would mean I is str.length minus 1, or the next character is not a letter, so not character.isLetter str.char at I plus 1. And yeah, okay, that will do that one there. And so if that is true, we have found a word ending in Y or Z according to these instructions. So I want to return count. And let's see, I'm missing a parenthesis somewhere. I think I need one more here. Okay, yeah. Said it before and I'll say it again. I really wish this editor was bigger. Okay, alright, so let me see, where am I missing a parenthesis? Equals str.length. Or, oh, maybe, yeah, put C equals there. Okay, so that is how we could do this one. Yeah, so let's see if there's anything else I want to talk about here. Well, okay, there are a couple things we could do differently here. Of course, there are an infinite number of things we could do differently. But if instead of getting the thing at this index as a char, I could get it as a length 1 string. So I could say string, we can call it C instead. C, actually, I don't know. Let's just call it, I'll just give it a random letter T, is equal to the substring from I to I plus 1. So just instead of getting the character at this index, we'll get a length 1 string containing only the character at this index. And if we did it this way, we would say, so we want to see if it equals Y, and we can do t dot equals ignore case. I think I mentioned this in the like string toolkit video, where I talked about the string toolkit. So if t dot equals ignore case y, we could put that string y capital or lowercase, or t dot equals ignore case z, and that would have done that. If you wanted to use regex here, you could actually make this part a little shorter by just saying t dot matches And then inside square brackets, we're going to put y, y, z, z. And that would be a simpler way to write that part. And so what's going on here? So the matches method just tests if this string matches the given pattern. And this pattern, when you put a bunch of characters like this inside of square brackets, what it will do is basically it means match any one of these characters. So if T matches any one of these characters, then we're good. Another way of doing this is if you put question mark I in parentheses at the beginning of a regex, then it will make that regex case insensitive. So that means I could only do it like that, or I could do it like that. So that's how we could make this one a little more concise. Let's see here. The other parts are good. We could do this whole thing using regex, and I'm going to tell you how to do that because I just can't help myself. So here's how we could do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say return str.split. So I'm going to basically split the string on every spot where you see how like I have all the characters right and they're at their own indices, but then like if I were like in a word editor, I could put my cursor in between either of these characters. So I'm going to split it at every point where I could put my cursor where there is a Y or Z before it and a non-alphabetic character, which also includes the end of the string, ahead of it. So I'm going to split it not on a character, but between characters here. And the way I'll do that is I'll say split everywhere where there is where behind us, there is and I'm going to make this regex case insensitive, but everywhere where behind us there is a Y or Z, and ahead of us, so this thing here means like look behind, and so if behind us there's a Y or Z, and ahead of us, question mark equals means ahead of us, there is, so question mark exclamation mark means ahead of us there is not this thing, or question mark equals would mean ahead of us there is this thing. So and ahead of us there is not what does it say? There is not an alphabetic letter immediately following it. So is not an alphabetic letter, which we could say is A through Z are the alphabetic letters, capital and lowercase. This is another one of those square bracket situations. You can also do a range of characters. In addition to just listing out the characters you want, you could do a range of characters like this, and you could put multiple ranges too. And then if we get the length of this, and I think we have to, you might have to add one or subtract one there. I'm not exactly sure. Okay, let's see. So this is running 2. Let's see here. Exclamation mark. The next character is that, and the next character is not a letter. Well, let me actually think about this and see. I'm going to pause the recording and think about this and see why it's not working. Okay, so I just needed to make sure that at the end of the string it's matching. So right here, if imagine my cursor was right here. So this basically in the split methods documentation, if we go over here and look at this method, let me just go to it real quick. It says that somewhere in here, trailing empty strings are therefore not included in the resulting array. So that means that even though there is a match, if my cursor was at the very end of the string, the only stuff after that is empty. There's no text after that cursor. So that is not included in the ending array. So I'm going to use a trick similar to one I used earlier and just add an underscore to my string before I split it. And now you'll notice I get everything wrong, and that's because I need to subtract it by 1, right? Because if you want to find the number of times I split it, which is what I want to do, then, like in other words, the number of chops I made to split up the string, then I want to take the number of pieces I have minus 1, and that will work. But of course, like always, you don't have to use regex. You could just use what we have here without the regex that's there. Okay, let's move on. Without string. Given two strings, base and remove, return a version of the base string where all instances of the remove string have been removed. You may assume that the remove string is length 1 or more. Remove only non-overlapping instances, so with xxx, removing xx leaves x. Alright, pause and try this. So, my hope is that you tried the replace method, which I talked about, I think, at the very beginning, string 1, in the string 1 video, talked about the replace method. So, base.replace the remove string with nothing. Because if you want to, because removing something is the same as replacing it with nothing. So if I replace remove with nothing, then it might work. But it doesn't. Let's see why it doesn't. Okay, so, because, let's see, because we want to, do it not case sensitively. Okay, so the replace method will not work here. I'll show you in a second how to actually make it work, but for now, let's actually solve it the real way. Because even if replace did work, I would show you how to do it with loops, and so that's what I'll show you here. Okay, so we need to remove every occurrence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through my base string, and whenever I see an occurrence of the remove string, well, I'm going to, remove it obviously. But yeah, so I'm trying to think if I want to do this by making a result variable, a result string like I've done before, or if I want to just modify stir. And honestly, I kind of just want to modify stir because I think that's easier. So I'm going to start looping through my my string, and I'm going to say if starting at index I, so start at substring, starting at index I see the remove string. And I guess, actually, well, the problem is, we could just convert everything to lowercase and then we wouldn't have to worry about case. But the problem is we have to give our answer back with the same case as the original string. So that's the problem there. Um, so yeah, I would love to just do that, but we can't, unfortunately, because we have to return it with the same case as we were given it. So let's do this differently. So we can't just say starts with, because starts with is case sensitive. All methods in string are case sensitive unless otherwise, specified. Um, so instead we'll have to say, well, let's see. First of all, I didn't have to do this because I thought starts with would work, but I remembered it's case sensitive. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to not loop up to any point where the remove string would like go out of bounds if it started there. So if the remove string was length 1, then we wouldn't have any worries because it's just one character, so we don't need to subtract anything. But if the remove string was length 2, then we'd have to stop 1 before the end. If it was length 3, we have to stop 2 before the end. So in other words, we need to stop the length of the remove string minus 1 before the end. So length of the remove string minus 1 before the end. If you wanted to distribute this out and say minus remove.length plus 1 without the parentheses, that would work as well. So if the substring from I to I plus remove.length, so what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to see if the remove string occurs in stir starting at index I. So if that equals, ignoring case, the remove string, then what I want to do is I want to basically set stir equal to the same string but without this part that I want to remove. So stir.substring 0 to I plus stir.substring I, so let's see, remove.length, I plus remove.length, and that'll get rid of that for me. And honestly, I don't think I need to adjust the index. We've seen that in other problems whenever I did something to the string, I had to like adjust the index, but I don't think I'll need to here actually. Um, and that is really honestly all I have to do, I think. So let's not stir but base. Oh, I've been calling it stir this whole time. Well, guess what I can do? I can actually rename that. Shh, don't tell anyone. Okay. So now let's see why it's not working here. So um, let's see. Oh, I think this is because I actually do need to adjust the index because um, because if let's actually just do an example in Paint. Let's say I had this string a x x. All right, let's do a y y y y b, and my remove is y y. Okay. Um, so what I'm doing is I'm looping through the array. So I starts at this index, and it doesn't find a remove string there, so it moves to the next index, um, and it looks there, and it does find the remove string. So what it does is then it deletes this part from the string. So now I'm left with a, y, y, b, because these two characters have been removed. But then I gets incremented, so I moves up to here, because this is the next index. And now you can see the problem, right? It looks for YY here, doesn't find it, goes to the next spot, looks for YY, doesn't, or actually it doesn't even go to this spot because it'll stop early. So then we don't end up removing this second occurrence. So what I need to do is I need to make it, if I just remove something, I need it to not increment. So I need it to stay in the same spot. So there are various ways to do this. One is to just revert the increment that's about to happen. So subtract one from it and then add one to it, which is going to have a net zero effect, making it effectively not move. So that's how I could do that. I don't like that solution because I just think it's, I don't know, feels wrong. I don't know if it feels that way to you, but like just subtract it and then add to it immediately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to actually remove this increment part from the loop. So this is something you can do in for loops. You don't have to include this last part. If you don't include it, just like the for loop won't automatically do anything at the end of every iteration. So I'm just going to remove it. Now, of course, this means that we have to manually do this at the end of every iteration. So like I have to put this somewhere in the for loop to adjust I, right? Because if I never adjust I, then this loop's going to run forever. So we don't want that. So what I'm going to say is only if I don't find the remove string do I increment. So naturally this will just not increment it at all. Only if I don't find the remove string do I want to increment I. So that's another way of doing it. There. And of course we can get rid of all of these curlies this time. So yeah, that is how we could do this. And so now I want to talk about real quick how we could do this using replace. One thing you've probably seen with regex so far, this solution is going to use regex, by the way, if you couldn't guess. One thing you probably noticed is that it's kind of ugly and very unreadable. So that's, I suppose, something to consider. But it's definitely concise and well, easy in terms of not requiring you to write a lot, but maybe not easy to come up with the actual little stuff that you have to write. Okay, so I would love to just do, right, return stir.replace, remove, sorry, yeah, remove with nothing, right? I'd love to just do this. That would make it so easy, but the case insensitivity of this is making it annoying. So here's what I'll do is this is my regex. So, well, actually, first of all, the replace method doesn't use regex. It doesn't use it at all. It's a simple, straightforward, takes this string, every literal occurrence of this string, replaces it with this. Nothing fancy. The replace all method, and I know it can be confusing because they both start with replace. The replace all method is similar to the replace, but this thing is treated as a regular expression. So it is a little different. So now, of course, I don't want this to match a regular expression. I want this remove text to just be the contents of the remove string, but ignoring case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add first the case insensitive part, and then put in the remove string. Now, this might work for the test cases we have here. Let's actually see. It does. but this is not going to work for all cases. And let me actually prove that to you. So, and this is just because CodingBat doesn't test your code thoroughly enough here. Um, but I will test your code thoroughly enough. Let me show you why this will actually not work. So let's say I have a string stir here. Actually, I can go ahead and copy this whole thing. Okay, and I'm going to make it static. Don't worry about that, what that means yet, or, well, right now. So I got our method here, right? So I can call it from other places. So if I call it, with, just an example that they've given us, so like this here, if I just say without string, and I'll print out, oops, okay, I'll print out the thing that they give us here as well. So right, hello there, and replacing LLO, or sorry, removing LLO gives he there exactly as expected. Let's see, where's an example of like a case insensitive one? This is a fish. Okay, so yeah, this is an example of a of one that is takes advantage, or like has some case things going on. Okay, so that's good, and of course it works for all these test cases as we know. But I'll show you an example where it doesn't work. If I do without string, my stir can just be whatever, I don't care. And then my remove string is going to be plus, and my program crashes. So here's why this is crashing. Because the remove string here, whatever I pass to the replace all method as its first argument is going to be treated as a regex. Now, if you just put a plus in, just a plus on its own, even if it's preceded by the case insensitive thing, a plus on its own is an invalid regex. Because we talked about plus means one or more occurrences. I don't know if we've mentioned this. Plus means one or more occurrences of the thing right before it. Well, if there's nothing before the plus, then the plus doesn't mean anything. And so that's an invalid regex. So what I need to do, because I don't want to be treating the remove string as a regex. I want to be treating the remove string as a literal text to match, to find in my string and remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do pattern. I'm going to do pattern.quote remove. And now it will work just fine, even if I had some pluses in here. Those pluses will be removed. And now we're good. Okay, so let's talk about what happens. If you use this method, this function pattern.quote, it'll take your string that you pass it, and it'll make it so that it's suitable to be used in a regex, but still match the literal text of this string that you pass it. So that is how we could make this code more robust and make it actually work for all cases, not just the ones CodingBat happens to test you on. Okay, now the pattern thing, we talked about how for some things like the arrays class, you have to import it using this java.util thing, and we talked about how CodingBat does that import automatically for you. Now, CodingBat does not automatically import this class for you, but that's okay. That just means that we need to call it by its full name. Because when you import something, you can, you don't have to call it by its full name. String actually has a full name. It's this right here, java.lang.string. But string is a special, type that they let us, that is automatically imported for us as well. And that's not by CodingBat, that's just by Java. But anyway, if I want to use the pattern class in CodingBat, I'm going to need to import it. But you can't actually write import statements in CodingBat, so what we need to do is we just need to refer to it using its full name. Because if you want to use a class that you haven't imported, you have to refer to it using its full name, unless it's, again, one of the special classes like string. So I'm going to refer to its full name, which is java.util.regex.pattern. I know, very long. And then, so that's the class that has the quote method that I want. And so I'm going to do .quote remove. And that will do this a bit better here. So that, again, no change in the CodingBat output, but we know that this is a better solution because it actually works. Okay, so yeah, that is how you could do this using regex if you would like to. Given a string, return true if the number of appearances of is anywhere in the string is equal to the number of appearances of not anywhere in the string. Go ahead and pause and try this one. Okay, so you might have even tried this with regex because we have done something similar to this before. But if not, it's fine. Don't feel like you need to. Okay, so the number of appearances of is equal to the number of appearances of not, and this is going to be case sensitive. So I'm actually going to write a helper method that gets the number of occurrences. So I'll just call it count. Yeah, just count. And it's going to take a string str, and then it's going to take a string find. Find is going to be the thing we're trying to find, unsurprisingly. And all I need to do in my equalIsNot method is return that the count of is equals the count of not. So not bot, not. So that'll be pretty straightforward. So now I just need to find the number of times that that find occurs in stir. So all I need to do is go through this. It says this is case sensitive, so I don't have to do that equals ignore case thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through my string, I less than stir.length. I'm going to say if stir.substring I starts with find. This is going to be okay because even if even if like I is one before the end, I is at like the last possible index, and find is 3 characters long, we're going to be fine because the starts with method handles all the index stuff for us. It doesn't give us exceptions, doesn't crash our program. It just returns false if it doesn't find what we pass it. So if the substring starting at this index starts with find, we're going to increment our counter by 1. I'll call our counter count. I'll just say count plus plus and then return the count. And that should do it. Notice that again, we are using the same name for this local variable. That's what this would be called. Whenever you create a variable inside of a method, it's called a local variable. There are other kinds of variables which we haven't talked about yet. Parameters are actually one kind of variable. So we've talked about 2 kinds of variables. But yeah, so we are using the same name for the method and this local variable. That is fine. They're not going to conflict here. So we can totally do that. And yeah, that's really all we have to do for this solution. If you wanted to, you could do minus find.length minus 1 here. But you don't have to because starts with will take care of that for you. And just to verify that we do need the minus 1, yeah, not doing that will not work because then we will not see matches of find that happened at the very end of stir. So we need to do that minus 1 there. All right. So there we go. Let's move on. Actually, is there, I always must check, is there a regex way to do this? And yes, there is. Okay, so I'm going to first add underscores to the string because just to give it like starting and ending things. And then I'm going to say, does the, so we talked about how if I want to find the number of times a thing occurs in the string, a sort of sneaky way to do this is to split based on that thing. So stir.split not, not, and then subtract 1 from the number of things in the resulting array, right? Because, well, I already talked about why. So this number here that in these parentheses will be the number of times not appears in the string. And actually, this doesn't even use regex, so this is not a regex solution. But so this number in parentheses here is the number of times not appears in the string, and does that equal? I guess I'll do it in the same order I did it before. So does the number of times is occur equal the number of times not occurs? And yeah, let me comment out this line first. And that is another way to do it. Notice that you can treat this thing here as an equation. If I add 1 to both sides, then I end up with this here. and it simplifies things, right? Because if x minus 1 equals y minus 1, then x also equals y. So we are good here. Yeah, and so we do need to actually put the underscores on here. If yeah, if I think actually we don't need the starting one technically, but it doesn't hurt to put it there. But we do need the ending one because of the trailing substrings thing that we talked about in the string split method here. Okay, so let's keep going. We'll say that a lowercase g in a string is happy if there's another g immediately to its left or right. Return true if all the g's in the given string are happy. Go ahead and pause and try this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reframe the problem and say that this problem is equivalent to asking whether or not there is a g in the string that does not have a g as its neighbor. So if I can find whether there's a string, whether there's a lowercase g that does not have a g as a neighbor, then that'll be equivalent to solving this problem. So that's what I'm gonna do. Instead of verifying that like every g like has a neighbor, I'm just gonna find I'm gonna ask is there a g that does not have a neighbor, and if there is, I'll return false because not all the strings are happy and not all the g's are happy, and then otherwise true. So that's what I'll do. So I'll say for int I equals 0, I less than the string.length, I plus plus. I want to search every character in the string, and I want to say if the character here, so I'll get the character here. So start at char at I. So if this character is a g, and so what I want to put in these parentheses, I want to ask is the thing before it not a g? So in other words, is it not preceded by a lowercase g? So it is not preceded by a lowercase g if it is at the beginning of the string, so I equals 0, or the character before it, start.char at I minus 1, is not g. Okay, and then so there's a g at this index, and it's not preceded by a g. I want to say, and it's not followed by a g. So it's not followed by a g if it's at the end of the string, or I'll go into a separate line here, or the next character is not a g. So if I find this, that means I have found a g that is unhappy, and therefore I should return false, and otherwise true. All right, there we go. Let's see. Let's see if we can do a regex solution. I'm not exactly sure if I can, but I'll try to do a regex way of doing it. So I'm gonna write I'm gonna basically determine if there are any unhappy g's in the string. So if there's an unhappy string, an unhappy g in the string, if the string contains I'm doing the dot star at the beginning and end, if it contains a g where before it is not a g and after it is not a g. And if I find that somewhere in the string, there is at least a g somewhere that's unhappy, and therefore I want to negate this because this tells me if there's an unhappy g. This is true if there's an unhappy g, and I want to be false if there's an unhappy g. So that's another way of doing it, much more concise. We'll say that a triple in a string is a char appearing 3 times in a row. Return the number of triples in the given string. The triples may overlap. Go ahead and pause and try this. All right, let's do this one. All right, so I'm going to go through the string here, and I really want this to be bigger. Like, I want the text to be bigger for y'all, but the editor is the box is so small, and we need to also see the stuff on the side. Okay, so I'm going to go through the string, and I'm going to skip the last 2 characters because there can't be a triple starting at one of the last 2 characters because there's not enough characters to make a triple. So I'll stop 2 before the end, and then what I want to do is I want to say I'm going to test if there's a triple starting at this index. and I will also need a count. So let me make that. And basically, if the character at index I is equal to the character at index I plus 1, and the character at index I is equal to the character at index I plus 2, there are other ways you could write that as well, then we have found a thing, and this is why I need to do this. If I have found a triple starting at index I, increase the count, return the count. Yeah, I don't really know what they were talking about with two loops. Have we even used two loops yet? I don't know. Okay, but this is how we could do this one. If you want to do this with regex, which even if you don't want to, I want to, so I'll show you. Okay, so if you want to do this with regex, what I'll do is I'll basically split the string everywhere I see a triple. Sorry, I'll split the string everywhere where my cursor could be, where my cursor is followed by a triple. So here's how I'll do that. I'll say str.split wherever I see ahead of me 3 of the same thing in a row. So what I'll do is I'll take some character. So I'll see some character which is a dot, and then I'll say that same character 2 more times. So \\1 will give me the contents of the first parenthesized group in my string, and I think this period will be treated as the first parenthesized group. Like I think these outer parentheses won't matter, but they might. So we'll see. So everywhere where ahead of me I see 3 of the same character, I want to split the string and then subtract 1 from the length. And so that is what I'll do there. Sorry, dot length, because again, str.split returns an array. Okay, and then what is happening here is, okay, so this is case sensitive. Let's see, so the triples can overlap. Let me think about this. I'm going to pause the recording for 1 second. Okay, so the only issue was I just needed to add an underscore at the beginning. I think this is the only issue. Let's see here. Yeah, and so that is going to help us solve it. So the reason I have to put an underscore at the beginning is because if you had a string like this, if I called my split method on this this string, then this first split where my cursor was here, right? Because if my cursor's right here, then I see a triple ahead of me. And so we'd think that would we would split it up there, and we'd have an empty string at the beginning of my split array, and then some other stuff after. But if you read, this is all in the documentation, but it's a very subtle point, which says that when there is a positive width match at the beginning of this string, then an empty leading substring is included at the beginning of the resulting array. And the key part here is that this happens only when there's a positive width match, which means that the match actually matched, some characters, not just like a cursor position. So this just matches a cursor position. And so therefore the empty leading substring, there's empty leading string that it talks about, is not included in the resulting array. If I add an underscore, then the part before this will not be leading, empty, like the part before my cursor will not be empty, and so it will be included. So that's how we could do this. And yeah, I'm trying to think if this would break if my input contained the same characters. Like if I added an X here, would this break this test case? Which is what I'm trying to see. No, it doesn't. Okay, cool. So that means that I could pick any random character to add here. Oops, I accidentally clicked Control S. So I could pick any character here and it wouldn't break it. I just wanted to see that because it doesn't even matter what this character is, because even if it did cause a triple to occur, so where's a string that starts with 2 of the same character? They did not test that. Okay, it's fine. We will just go over here. I've been doing some debugging in the IDE. So if I took a string like this, And let's say like this string, right, it doesn't contain a triple of x's. So right now it just contains, if we were to do the length minus 1, dot length minus 1, um, dot length, wait. This is my split dot length minus 1. Don't want to do that anymore. So if I were to print out this, right, this contains two triples, right, which are the two y's. But even if I add the extra x here, right, which is what's happening when I add this original character, right? So suppose this here with only two x's at the front was my original string. If I add an extra x at the beginning, that does not cause it to find another triple, so we're fine there. Because again of the positive width requirement to have a leading empty string. Okay, so that's how we could do that one. Again, you don't have to use regex if you don't want to. Okay, given a string, return the sum of the digits 0 through 9 that appear in the string, ignoring all other characters. Return 0 if there are no digits in the string. Okay, so go ahead and pause and try this. Alright, so the hints here are quite useful because I don't think we've talked about either of those two methods before. So here's what we'll do. So we'll go through the string, or first of all, I'll make my sum here just a variable, and we'll zoom in a bit. Yeah, I really, man, I really wish the editor was bigger. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. Okay, so I'm going to go through my string, and I'm actually going to use the enhanced for loop this time because it is appropriate in this case, because I actually don't need to know the indices of the character the index of the character I'm looking at. So, okay, man, I hate being this zoomed in. Okay, so if this character is a digit, which we can do, you can see the hint there, then I'm good to go. And if it is a digit, I want to get its value. So the value of this character is going to be, I want to use integer.parseInt. But notice that integer.parseInt takes a string, and this is a char, not a string. So to convert the char to a string, I just have to do string.valueOf and pass the char. And then I'm just going to say sum. I'm going to add this value to the sum and return the sum. And so there we go. That is how we could solve this one. So of course, we could inline this if we wanted to. Another way to convert a char to like if you know that that char is a digit, like it's the character, not the number, but the character 0 through 9. One way to convert it to its numeric value is to do that number. Let me go back to the value here. Is to instead do just the character minus 0, and this 0 is a char. And so that'll also work. And so what's happening here is that this is a char, this is a char, so that, yeah, this thing here is a char. And so whenever you do a char minus a char, the result is actually an int, and it's the int you would get if you subtracted the numeric values of the chars. And when I say numeric values, I mean like how I told you before that if each character is associated with a number, so if you took the two numbers they're associated with them and subtracted those, then you get, of course, a resulting number, and that is what happens when you subtract the two chars. You get an int that is that resulting number. So the character is associated with the number associated with the character 0 is 48, and then the number associated with the character 1 is 49, and then just keeps counting up like that. 2 is 50, 3 is 51, 4 is 52, etc. And so what that means is that if you subtract 48 from the character, if you subtract 48, then right, because 0, the number associated with the character 0 is 48. So if you subtract 48 from that, you'll get the actual numeric value of the character, which is 0, because 48 minus 48 is 0. So that's what's going on here. I could also put 48 here. 48 we know is an int. This would be an int. And if you do a char minus an int, the result is an int as well. So that's how we could do it. But because I personally don't like remembering, don't want to rely on like remembering the exact number that every character is associated with, because that just seems terrible, I'm just going to put that character in instead. and that'll work. So that's, I think this is like just a better way to write it instead of just a random 48 there. So yeah, that's another way to convert a character to a number. Um, there are other ways to do this. If you did a normal for loop, you could get like substrings from I to I plus 1 and like just pass it in here directly without string.value of. There are of course plenty of ways to do this. Um, if Yeah, so let's see what we could do here. There is a one way that comes to mind too, it's just sort of, well, just an interesting way, interesting other take on this, is that if I get rid of all the non-digits from the string, first, I don't have to do this if statement here. And so you can, think what you will about the solution I'm about to do or the thing I'm about to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of the non-digits from the character. And so I'm going to set stir equal to, I'm going to basically replace all the non-digits with nothing, so effectively remove them. So something is not a digit. So one thing, one regex that matches replace all, by the way, is using regex. So \\d, if you put that in a regex, this will match anything, any character that is not a digit. So I'm going to replace anything that's not a digit with nothing. And then now we've done this without the if part there. I could make this more concise by doing this, and then I could get rid of the curly braces. And that's another way to do this. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to tell you another solution to this, but I'm not going to explain it. I'll point you to resources if you want to learn what's going on, but I'm not going to explain it because it would literally take an hour. So, but I will show you another way to do this. That doesn't even use regex. It's something completely different and perhaps more complicated. But okay, so one other thing you could do is you could do return stir.chars, and I hope CodingBat supports this method. I don't think this method is too new for CodingBat. So we can do stir.chars.filter c character.isDigit dot map map c to c -0 dot sum, and yeah, that is another way to do it. So if you would like to go down the rabbit hole and discover what everything is going on here, I'll just tell you that this .chars method returns something called an int stream. So this thing here is an int stream. If you want to read up on this, you can read it here. You should also look at the stream class, which has more detailed documentation of what's going on, of what it does. And then this thing here, this filter method, of course, is a method on instream, so is map, so is sum. And then this arrow thing, this minus greater than sign, which looks like an arrow, is something called a lambda expression. So if you look up Java lambda expressions, you could read about those as well. But that's all I'll tell you about this. Again, did not expect you to come up with that, of course, because it is not related to anything I've told you so far, but as another way to do this. And notice that this is all one statement, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's move on. Given a string, return the longest substring that appears at both the beginning and end of the string without overlapping. For example, sameEnds abx ab is ab. Okay, go ahead and pause and try this one. Okay, so this is kind of a fun one, because it's just a different kind than the other ones, right? A lot of the other ones we've just been looping through the characters, checking a condition, or like incrementing a counter or something else. But this one's a bit different, which is kind of cool. So we want to test if the string starts and ends with the same text. So here's what we'll do. So I'm going to go through the string, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a counter that's just going to go through, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take successively larger substrings of the string starting at the front. So first I take just A, then I take AB, then I take ABX, then I take ABXY, and then ABXYA, and then ABXYB until I've taken the whole string. So I'm going to take successively larger substrings of the string. So I, in this case, is going to be my ending index of my substring. So not the index of the last character in my substring, but one more than the index of the last character that's actually going to be present in my substring. So in other words, it's the second argument I would pass to the substring method on strings. So I'm going to start at 1, and I'm going to go until I'm actually less than or equal to the length of the string, because, right, if I wanted to get like the last character in a string of length 4, I would do start at substring 3, 4. And so notice that that second index 4 is the same as the length of the string, so I do want to actually go up until I am at the length of the string, and then increment I. And then my substring is going to be the substring from 0 to I, and then, because that's going to be the first I characters of my string. And now all I need to do is say, is see if the string starts and ends with this sub here. So if stir starts with sub, with these characters, and stir ends with these characters, I want to somehow mark out that this is the longest one I've found so far, right? So I need some way of like notating that, of saying that, I need some way of saying like to my code that this sub here, is the longest substring I've found. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a string here called best. It's going to be store the best thing I've found so far. So I'm going to start it out as the empty string, and whenever I find a new string that matches, and since I know my substrings are getting increasingly longer, I know that whenever I find a new one, it'll be longer than everything I found before. So if I find a new substring that the string starts and ends with, I'm going to update my best to now be this substring. And when I'm done updating best, looping through all the possibilities, I just return the best. Now there's one thing you might be concerned about, and that is that it said non-overlapping. And right now, if I were to run it on like this here, it would actually give me XX, I believe. I can actually test this, and we can see if I put my parentheses in place, and I really wish they would be consistent. Like literally everything is called stir, and then all of a sudden they're like a string. Okay, so yeah, so it's not gonna work for this one, because actually, what my code is doing is, since it's taking every string up until the entire string, well, obviously the string starts and ends with the entire string. So what I need to do is actually not go up to the length of the string. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to half the length of the string, because it says non-overlapping, right? And if I'm taking more than half from the front, and I'm comparing that to more than half from the back, well, those are going to overlap. So what I want to do is only take the first half of the characters. And if it's an odd number, I can actually only take, I can do, I can do up to 1 before the middle character, right? Because if I go up to and include the middle character, then I will still have some overlapping, like if I took the front 2 and the last 2 in this string. So I'm going to go up to start out length over 2. And yeah, so yeah, that is going to be how I'll do that instead. And so that will actually solve it. So yeah, that is how we could do this one. And believe it or not, I actually don't have a sneaky regex solution for this. So this is all I can really do here. Yeah, so that is how we could do this one. I'm just thinking if there's anything I wanted to talk about with this. Um, if you did like, or hopefully you remember this starts with and ends with methods, because they make this a lot easier. Yeah. All right, let's go on. Given a string, look for a mirror image string at both the beginning and end of a given string. In other words, 0 or more characters at the very beginning of the given string and at the very end of the string in reverse order, possibly overlapping. Interesting, possibly overlapping. For example, the string ABXYZBA has the mirrored end AB. Okay, this is going to be a doozy, perhaps, compared to the previous one. So go ahead and pause and try this. Okay, so here's how I'm going to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take increasingly larger substrings, just like before, and see if my string ends with that substring. Now, the only problem is I need to see if it ends with that substring in reverse order. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to, whenever I test if my my string ends with something, I'm going to actually just reverse it right before I do that ends with check. So just to show you how similar my solution is to the previous one, and also to save time, not going to lie, I'm kind of being lazy here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my code from the last problem. And since I can overlap now, I want to go all the way up to the end of the string. And the only real difference here is I want to reverse it before I check if it ends with it, right? Because before I was just checking, okay, like does AB match AB at the end of the string? But now I want to see does AB match BA at the end of the string. So I need to reverse it when I try to see if it ends with this the string sub here. So if only I had a reverse method. That would be really useful, right? So let's write a reverse method. So I'm going to call it reverse, and it's going to take a string stir. Okay, so here's what we'll do. We will, let's see. Okay, so we need to reverse the string. So I'm going to create a result here. There are other ways of doing this, like shorter ways of reversing a string, which I'll show you at the end. But start with the result string, and all I need to do is iterate through my string backwards. Start out length -1, I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus, and just say result plus equals start at char at I, and return results. Hopefully that code's not too hard to follow. And that is how we would do this one and rename their parameter, and there we go. So that's how we could solve this one. If you want to, if you wanted to do this reverse method a little more concisely, here's how you could do it. You could say return new string builder stir dot reverse dot toString. Okay, so string builder. Oops, I accidentally clicked inspect. Okay, string builder is another class you can look into if you'd like. It is one of those classes that you have access to by default. You don't even need to import it. So you can create a new string builder, and you pass it a given string when you create it, and the string builder will have that as its content. A string builder is like a string, but it's mutable, so you can modify it without creating new strings. So basically, I create a string builder that starts with this text here, this same text as stir, and then I reverse it, and then I just convert it back to a string. So pretty, or I won't necessarily say straightforward, but it's much more concise than what I had there. All right, given a string, return the length of the largest block in the string. A block is a run of adjacent chars that are the same. All right, go ahead and pause and try this one. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. So this is going to be, I think, a bit more challenging on the logic side. I'm just trying to think if there's like a simple way to do it, like a simple way to think about it. First here, so let's see. So basically, here's what we could do. We could start at a character, and let's say we're looking at this character right now, and we just find, so we said that the current character is B, right? Actually, let's do the C. Current character is C. Okay, and then what I do is I go forward. So here's my I, right? My I is at whatever this index is looking at this first C here. We're all good. And then I send like another guy, like I send out a scout, another index to go search for, hey, where's the last C that I find? Not the last C of the string, but like the last C I find without, like, if I were just looking at C's, like when's the next time I see a non-C character? And it says, hey, I first see a non-C character right here, which means that this must be where the last C is in this block. So then, now I know that I have one foot at this C and 1 foot at this C. So in other words, I have one index right here and one index right here. And using those two values, I can compute the length of this block by just subtracting them and I think adding 1, or no, I don't need to add 1 here. And so that'll give me the length of this block. And then all I need to do is keep track of the largest block I've found so far as I'm iterating through the string. So yeah, still a lot. Like, even though I just articulated how we could solve it, it's still going to be a lot of code. again, compared to what we've written so far. So how should we do this? So I'm going to keep track of the max block we found. We only need to get the length of the max block. We don't need to actually return the block itself. So I'll call it maxLen. I'll set it to 0 by default. Yeah, I'll set it to 0. So let's go ahead and loop through our string. So this, I think we might actually, not we might, we will actually need double loops. So the problem writer, or in the instructions of this section, it said we need 2 loops. So we're going to start at index 0 and go up to the length of the string. Okay, and then I said I'm going to send out a scout here, and he's going to find out where's the next non-C character, like in this one. So the character at this current index, I guess I'll happen to also call the variable C. So the character at index I is going to be chart I, right? So that's great. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another index. Usually when we have index variables, we call them I, J, and K in that order. So my other index is going to be called J. So J, it'll start at where I am right now, which is at I, and it'll keep going ahead and looking forward until either it reaches the end of the string, or it finds a character that's not equal to my current character, which is C. So what I'll do is I'll say while, and in fact actually I'll set j equal to I plus 1, because we know that at I we have the character obviously. So we'll start one after I. We don't need to check I again. And what I'll say is while j is not out of the string, so while j is still in bounds, obviously, right? We can't go out of the string or we'll get an exception. Our program will crash. While j is not, out of bounds, and the character at index j is equal to the current character, which is C, just increment j. So just send it forward. So okay, j is going to walk forward and it's going to say, okay, do I have the same character? Yes, move forward. Same character? Yes, move forward. Same character? Yes, move forward. Different character? Okay, I'm going to stop. And then j is just going to keep walking forward until he finds a different character. Okay, so now I know that where j is right now, j is actually one more than the last character I found. So like if here was I was at this character, j would be right here. But I want the index of the last character in my block. So the last character is going to be at j minus 1. And if I want to find the length of my block, I just take this index minus this index and actually add 1. So right before my block is going to be at j minus 1. And so that's going to be the last character in my block. So let me actually make these indices here. So the first character in my block is at index I. The last character in my block is at index j minus 1. So if I want to get the length of my block, it's going to be last minus first plus 1. So my block length, the length of my block, is going to be last minus first plus 1. And then all I need to do is I need to update maxlen. I need to say, hey, is this current block, this block I just found, is it bigger than maxlen? If so, if blocklen is bigger than maxlen, then guess what? Maxlen is now equal to this bigger value. And then when I'm done, finally, I return maxlen. Okay, so that will solve that one. Now there's some simplifications we can do. So I don't actually need the first variable because it just equals I, which I already have a variable that stores I. It's called I. So I'll just do I here. Last minus I plus 1. And then notice that last is the same as j minus 1. So j minus 1. Sorry, that's not where it goes. Last is the same as j minus 1. So I can actually do that. And if I simplify this expression mathematically, it's the same as just j minus I. So that's a better way of doing it, or a more concise way of doing it. So that's how we could do this one. Do note that I need to put these two things, these two Boolean expressions that I'm anding together, I need to put them in that order. If I didn't put them in this order, I would have some bad things happen. So make sure you put them in this order so we can take advantage of short circuiting and make sure this never goes out of bounds. Also note that this does work for empty strings, because if the string is empty, we never even enter this for loop, and we just return maxlen, which is 0 by default. yeah, so I think this is the hardest one we've done so far, and I think it was pretty fun. Um, so yeah, anything else to talk about? Um, I don't think so. Um, one thing we could do is we could, because we know, like once I've done this C block here, right? I could then move I to be one after it, right? Because I don't need to, now that I found this block, I don't need to like then check, okay, what's the largest block starting here, right? I don't need to check for a block starting at this index because I've already found a block starting at this index that includes that character. So I could basically jump I ahead to the start of the next block here. Um, so then that would make my code a little more efficient and perhaps more, easier to follow, or maybe not, but I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. So what we could do is I could say at the end, and again, instead of incrementing I, just saying that I equals I plus the length of the block I just found. So I skip past to the end of this block. And this will actually be the character after the end of this block, after the last character in this block. So that's another way to do that. So instead of incrementing at the end of my, like incrementing one just every time, I increment by whatever the block I just found. And keep in mind that, a single character on its own is still just a block of length 1. So, or at least it is, as my code is treating it. So, yeah, that's how we could do this one. Given a string, return the sum of the numbers appearing in the string, ignoring all other characters. A number is a series of one or more digit chars in a row. Note character.isDigit char tests if a character is one of the chars, 0, 1, 9, 1 through 9. Okay, so an integer.parsing string, you've seen that before. Okay, so go ahead and pause this video and try it. All right, so we got to sum the numbers. Okay, I really am tempted to jump in straight away with a regex thing. So yeah, this is actually, because it gets a lot more difficult if you don't do it. So what I want to do, and I'm debating whether to do this, is to just um, split up the string wherever, on all the parts that are not numbers. So basically that I end up with just an array containing only the numbers, and then it'll be very simple to add them up. That will require a bit of regex. So if we wanted to do this without that, we could, of course, do that. But it'll just be more complicated, and I'm trying to think of what's the best way to do it without that regex. So here's what I'll do. I'll go through the string and, have an index I that's just going through, and whenever I is at a number, I send out a scout to find out where the end of the number is, and then I add that number to a sum total, and I just keep going through my string. And this time I have to make especially sure that I jump past the end of the number here, because I don't want to like add 123 to my sum and then add 23 to my sum and then add 3 to my sum, and that'd just be bad. So um, let's do that. So I'll create a sum here, and sum equals 0 for I equals 0, I less than the length of my string. And I don't want to increment it here because I'm going to need to increment it, especially to get past the last one, to get past the end of my number. So then what I'll say is that if, well, first of all, if we don't have a digit, so if this character is not a digit, the character at index I, if it's not a digit, then I'm actually just going to increment I by 1. And then I'm going to use a special thing called continue. So if you just put continue as its own statement, just continue semicolon, what it will do is it will go to the nearest enclosing loop, so for loop or while loop, and it will basically just make the loop start again. So it'll be as if like the loop body ended here, and then we just jump back up to the beginning of the loop. We did whatever the increment part was, if there was anything there, and then just go through the loop again, check the condition, go through the loop again. So that's what the continue word does. So this is like, it's like a mini return, like it's a return, but like just for the loop kind of thing. It's like a return in that it stops what's going on and jumps back up. So yeah, that's what we'll do there. And because I know that if I hit this continue, I'm going to jump back up to the start of the loop, I don't even need to say else here because I know that I'll never get down here if I went into the if statement. So I don't even need to put else here. So, okay, so now I know that the character at index I is a digit. So now I'm going to create a j guy to go and scout out the territory. So j is going to start at I plus 1, very similarly to how we did it last time. So while j is in bounds, length, and we have a digit at that character, sorry, at that index. Okay. Then then basically we're just going to keep walking j forward until we find the first non-digit character or the end of the string. And then let's see. So now all I need to do is I need to just add up this number to my sum. So the number string num, I'll say numster, so it's going to know it's a string, is going to be the substring from index I to j. And keep in mind that j is one after the last digit in the number. And we know that substring, conveniently, the second index is one after the last character you want in the substring. So this is going to be just fine. And so then I'm going to add to my sum. I'm going to parse that and add it to my sum. Okay. I'll of course return sum at the end. The only thing I have left to do is set I equal to j, because I know j is one after the last digit, so that's where I want to put I to. And there we go. Okay, so the thing I was talking about at the beginning with split and regex, I'll show you how to do that now. So let's write it that way. Okay, so okay, how should we do this? So I'm going to take my string and I'm going to first split it up. So I'm going to take any occurrence of like a series of non-digit numbers. I'm going to find where those are and split based on those. So basically my split is going to be, I'm going to split my string based on any non-digit character, so \\d, non-digit character, one or more times. So any run of non-digit characters, I'm going to split based on that, and then I'm going to create my sum, and all I need to do is loop through each string in my split. I guess I shouldn't use start again, but string numster in my split. I'm using the enhanced for loop because it is appropriate here because I have an array that I want to loop over. So all I need to do is add in, I need to parse this number and add it to my sum, return the sum. And let's see. Oh yeah, and then one thing we do want to make sure of is that the string is not empty, because if we had something like this here, right? This is a 0 with match at the beginning of the string, so there's going to be an empty leading string. So yeah, and I do not want to have that happening. So what I can do is I can make sure that the string is not empty, so that numster is not empty here, and I'll do that before I add it to the sum. So basically what I'm doing is I'm basically skipping over any strings that are in split that are empty and not adding them to my sum. Okay, so that's how we could do this, and as you can see, it's a bit more simpler to digest. Let's see. One thing I am considering though, and that I'm curious if this will work, is adding to my string before I add it. So before, like, we've added underscores just because they're just any character, right? Just a dead character in the string. But here, if I added like an underscore to my string and then I called split, it wouldn't really change anything because an underscore is just a non-digit character, so that would just be included in the first run of non-digit characters. But if I add a 0 at the beginning of the string, so 0, when I add it to my sum, it won't affect my sum, right? So if I put a 0 at the start of this string, and then I did the split, well, ABC would be the first match, but I would still have, so like the first string in my split array wouldn't be an empty string, it would be the string 0. And if when I add 0 to my sum, it would not affect the sum. So I'm wondering if this will work. I'm just sort of experimenting around here. And I'm wondering if I can do this, and now I don't need the if statement to test if things are empty. Okay, so cool. another way to do this. That's something I think I've never seen before, or I've never thought of before on this problem. But yeah, okay, so that is this one. Let's go on. All right, this is the last one. Given a string, return a string where every appearance of the lowercase word is has been replaced with is not. The word is should be immediately preceded or followed by a letter. So, for example, the is in this does not count. Note character.is letter, specific character is a letter. So it should not be immediately preceded or followed by a letter. Okay, go ahead and pause and try this. All right, so again, I am tempted to just write like a simple one-line regex, but I'll show you how to do it without regex too. And I'll do that first. So let's go ahead and do this here. So let's see. I'm actually going to do this with a replace with sorry not with a replace, but with a result string, because if I were just looping through and I just had to remove is, then I might just modify stir, like not modify it, but like keep reassigning it, and thus getting rid of characters. But since I need to replace something in stir with something else, it's easier, I think, to do that with a result variable. So I'm going to make a result variable here, result equals empty string, and it's going to go through the characters in stir. So, and I suppose I can skip the last one because I know an is cannot start at the last character. So length -1. Okay, so just going through my string here, and then I want to see if I find an is that's not preceded or followed by a letter. So if the character, so the substring, I guess I could say the substring, string at I starts with is. So if I have an is starting at index I, and let's see, either we're at the start of the string, or the character before it's not a letter, so not character that is letter, char at I-1. So if I'm at the beginning of the string or I'm not preceded by a letter, and I'm either at the end of the string, or actually wait, let's see. And so if the is at the end of the string, then I, the start of the is, will be at start at length -2. And so we're at start at length -2, or the character after the is, which is going to be stir.char at I +2 +2. So stir.char at, not character.char at I +2. So there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So if all those conditions are true, then I found an is that is eligible to be replaced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add is not to my result instead of is. And then otherwise, all I'm going to do is, and I'm going to put these in curly braces. So curly braces. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I guess this indentation level should be there. Okay. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the current character. So add start.char at I. Okay. Only thing I'm concerned about here is making sure that I increment, I keep my I counter, or my I index in check. And if I find an is and I replace it, I want to increment I like again, right? Because I want to skip past the S, because the next character I'd be looking at is the S. And I mean, I suppose it doesn't matter because I'd be fine. So actually, I think I'd be fine here without incrementing I. But I could do an extra increment on I there to skip past the S, because I know there's not going to be anything starting at S. I can't have an is that starts with an S, because that just isn't going to work. Okay, and then I can return my result. Let's see if this works. All right, did something silly again. I equals start at like -2 or start at chart I. Oops, start at chart I is not a letter, is what I wanted to say. Character dot is so if this is not a letter, then do that. Okay, so Is test. Let's see. So, oh, so yeah, I actually do need to take care of my index. Okay, because if I if I just let I, so let's say like I starts at, well, index 0, which happens to have an I, and so I see is, and so I replace it, then next I is at this index here, and this is an S, and whenever I find a character that's not the start of an eligible is, I just add it to the result. So, but I definitely don't want to add this random S to my result. So, so I'll make sure not to do that. So I'll have to increment I again. And I think it's also not going to work. Like, okay, oh, well, okay. Before I even get to that, this line here is to increment I past the S, just so that we're clear, so that I don't add this random S to my string. So that'll be there. And I think it's still not going to work because I'm not including the last character in my string. And so that's because I'm doing this start at length -1. And the purpose of that is because we know an is cannot start with the last letter. Now, I actually don't need to do this because starts with is going to handle stuff for us. It's going to handle index checking. So it's actually okay if I leave that off. And if I do leave it off, it'll let me include the last character in the string. So there you go. Yeah, kind of a long one for given the number of problems we had in this section, only what, 11. So yeah, but a good one. I enjoyed these problems. Yeah, one thing I'd like to say before I end the video is that I'm sorry that well, I kind of want to explain why like I'm pausing the video when I need to debug and like figure something out. Like with the regex stuff, I would be like, why isn't this working? I'm gonna pause the video and think about it, and then unpause the video, unpause my recording. So um, the reason I'm doing that is kind of because I don't want to do editing later. Now that doesn't mean like that I don't want you to like see me debugging, right? It's actually important to see people debugging, and like it's important to know how to debug well. Debugging, by the way, is just what we call troubleshooting in code when your code fails and like trying to figure out what's wrong. Um, so it actually is important for you to see like other people debugging and like be good at it, because like that's a lot of what coding is, and that's unstucking yourself and like, you know, helping you get unfrustrated because you finally figure out what's going on. So so yeah, the only reason I'm pausing it is because there's a probability that it may take me like an hour to debug. And maybe you've had that experience where like usually or like sometimes you can figure out in like 5 seconds, like, oh, I just missed a semicolon here. And sometimes it takes you like half an hour. And in the possibility that it takes me half an hour, like I don't want to, you know, be just a half an hour of the videos like debugging one tiny thing, especially on regex where it's not essential to the video. That's sort of like extra stuff I'm telling you just in case you want to know. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm not showing those parts. I'm pausing during those parts, is because like I don't want to, basically waste video time, especially because regex, me showing you regex is already meant to be sort of like an extra stuff, like a bonus feature, I suppose. So I don't want it to take up too much time. But anyway, um, that is the end of what I have to say. Yeah, that is all. I will see you next time for Array 2. I look forward to it. See you then.